I remember the exact second my whole world tilted sideways. I was standing in the bridal suite at Cedar Grove Manor, my veil pinned just right, my hands trembling with a happiness I thought was permanent, when my cousin Dana knocked and stepped inside with a strange look on her face. "Natalie," she said carefully, "have you seen where they put your parents?" Welcome back to the Family Revenge Tales. I laughed it off at first. I thought maybe there'd been a mix-up with the place cards. Something small, something a coordinator could fix in 2 minutes. I had no idea that in a few hours I would be standing on a stage in front of 250 people, holding a microphone with a shaking hand, about to say the truest thing I had ever said in my life. My name is Natalie Bennett. I'm 30 years old and I work as a physician assistant in Franklin, Tennessee. I want to tell you the story slowly, the way it actually happened to me, because I think if I rush through it, you might miss the parts that matter most. I grew up in a small brick house with a carport instead of a garage. My dad, Thomas, spent 31 years as an HVAC technician, coming home smelling like solder and sweat, always with a joke ready, even on his worst days. My mom, Carol, worked as a library assistant at the elementary school 2 miles from our house, and she knew the name of every kid who ever walked through those doors. We didn't have much, but we had dinner together every night, and we had each other. And growing up, I never once felt poor. I felt loved. That's a different kind of wealth, though it took me years to understand that. I earned my way through school on scholarships and loans and long nights at a diner where I refilled coffee cups until 2 in the morning. My parents couldn't pay my tuition, but they showed up to every single one of my exams, disguised as home-cooked meals left on my dorm's doorstep, notes tucked underneath the foil. "We're proud of you no matter what," my mom would write. I became a PA. I built a life. And then I met Brandon Calloway. Brandon was the kind of man who made a room feel warmer just by walking into it. He was the heir to Calloway Hospitality Group, a name attached to some of the most elegant hotels in Tennessee, but he never acted like money defined him. Or so I thought. On our 3rd date, he asked me about my parents. Really asked, leaning forward like he wanted to know everything. "They sound incredible," he told me. "I can't wait to meet them." I believed him completely. The proposal happened on a bridge overlooking the Harpeth River, the kind of moment you'd see in a movie, and I said yes before he even finished the sentence. For a while, everything felt like it was falling into place exactly as it should. But somewhere in the months of wedding planning, small things started happening that I chose not to examine too closely. Brandon's mother, Evelyn, took over almost immediately. She had opinions about the venue, the flowers, the guest list, the seating, even the font on the invitations. When I mentioned that my parents wanted to help pay for the rehearsal dinner, Evelyn smiled in that tight, polite way she had and said, "Oh, that's sweet, but we really have it handled, dear." My parents ended up contributing nearly $18,500 anyway, quietly, without complaint, because that's who they are. They just wanted to be part of something that mattered to me. Evelyn had other habits, too. She'd plan family dinners at the country club and simply forget to mention them to my parents. I found out about one of them from a photo posted online, my future in-laws smiling over appetizers at a table I hadn't even known existed. When I asked her about it, she waved a hand like it was nothing. "Oh, that was just a small thing, Natalie, hardly worth mentioning." She once told me, in a voice dripping with false concern, "I just worry your mom and dad might feel a little out of place with our crowd. It's not their fault, it's just a different world." Another time, while going over the guest list, she circled my Aunt Pam's name and asked, without looking up, "Does she own anything other than that denim jacket? I only ask because of the photographs." I sat there stunned, unsure whether to laugh or cry, and said nothing at all. When I brought any of it up to Brandon, he'd sigh and say, "She means well, Nat. Let's just get through the wedding and things will settle down after." I wanted so badly to believe him that I let it go. Again and again, I let it go, telling myself that love was supposed to require patience, not realizing I was mistaking patience for permission. The wedding day arrived at Cedar Grove Manor, an old estate with white columns and gardens that looked like something out of a painting. Nearly 250 guests filled the grounds: hotel executives, a state senator, business partners, old family friends of the Callaways. Everything gleamed. String lights hung between the oak trees. A 12-piece band tuned their instruments near the dance floor. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, and when I looked into his eyes, I saw the same pride I'd seen at my PA graduation, and I thought, this is the happiest day of my life. It was after the ceremony, during the transition to the reception, that Dana came to find me. I walked out of the bridal suite, still in my gown, and made my way toward the ballroom, and that's when I saw them. My parents were seated at a small, round table pushed into the back corner, right beside the audio-visual booth, half hidden behind a folded lighting rig. There was no centerpiece on their table, no place card holder shaped like the little gold leaves every other table had. When I checked the printed seating chart posted near the entrance, their names weren't even listed under Bennett family. They'd been moved to a section simply labeled additional guests. I felt my stomach drop the way it does when you miss a step in the dark. I found the wedding planner first. "There's been a mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My parents' table, it's wrong. Can we fix this before dinner starts?" She looked uncomfortable. "Oh, actually, sweetheart, that seating was finalized by Mrs. Calloway a few days ago. I was told it was intentional." Intentional. I stood there holding that word like a stone in my chest. I found Brandon near the terrace, laughing with two of his groomsmen, a champagne glass in his hand. "Brandon," I said, pulling him aside, "why are my parents sitting by the AV booth? They're not even in the family photo rotation. What is going on?" He glanced toward Evelyn, who was standing a few feet away speaking with the photographer, and something in his face shifted. Guilt, maybe, or just the discomfort of being caught. "Nat, please, not right now. Can we just get through tonight? We'll talk about it after." "Talk about what exactly?" I asked. "There's nothing to talk about. Just move them back to where they belong." He didn't answer. He just squeezed my hand and walked toward the terrace doors, and I stood there, my wedding dress suddenly feeling heavier than it had all day. A few minutes later, I went looking for him again, and that's when I heard voices near the side hallway, low and hurried. I recognized Evelyn's voice first. "Brandon, we discussed this. The Bennetts don't fit the image. Do you understand how many important people are here tonight? Senator Ashford is here. The Hendersons are here. We've spent decades building this family's reputation, and I will not have people whispering about who these people are." "I know, Mom," Brandon said, and his voice was tired, resigned. Not fighting her at all. "I already approved the seating change. I told the photographer to keep them out of the formal portraits too. It's just easier this way." I stood frozen in that hallway, my hand pressed against the wall, my whole body going cold. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't Evelyn acting alone. Brandon had approved it. He had chosen, deliberately, to hide the two people who raised me, fed me, worked their hands raw to give me a life because he was afraid of what wealthy strangers might think. I don't remember exactly how long I stood there, long enough for the shock to settle into something clearer, something closer to certainty. My best friend Brooke found me first. Brooke is a family law attorney, sharp as anything, and she took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. I told her everything in a rush of broken sentences. She listened, and then she said something I will never forget. "Natalie, listen to me. The ceremony happened, but the license hasn't been signed yet. It's still sitting in the folder in the bridal suite. You have a choice here. You always did." I looked at her, and for the first time all day, I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt clarity. I walked back into the ballroom as dinner was about to be served. The band was finishing a song. I asked the band leader, quietly, to give me the microphone for just a moment. He looked confused, but he handed it over. The room slowly quieted as I stepped onto the small stage near the sweetheart table, still in my wedding dress, my veil slightly crooked from the hallway. I looked out at 250 faces, and I found my parents' table in the back corner, half swallowed by shadow. "I want to thank you all for being here today," I began, my voice shaking but steady enough to carry. "This has been, in a lot of ways, the most important day of my life, but I need to say something honest before we go any further because I don't think I could live with myself if I didn't." I could see Brandon near the edge of the crowd, his face pale. A few hours ago, I found out that my parents, the two people who worked every single day of my childhood to give me a good life, were quietly moved to a table by the sound equipment, removed from the family photos, left off the official seating chart entirely. My parents, who gave nearly $18,500 toward this wedding because they wanted to be part of my happiness, weren't even good enough to sit with the family they've always considered part of their own. There was a stunned silence. I heard my mother's soft gasp from the back of the room. "I found out this wasn't a mistake," I continued, my eyes finding Brandon's. "It was a decision. Made because my parents, in someone's opinion, don't fit the image this family wants the world to see. And Brandon knew. Brandon approved it." I watched him lower his head. "I loved you," I said, quieter now, though the microphone still carried it to every corner of the room. "I still do, somewhere underneath all of this. But I could never build a life with someone who would trade his own family's dignity for the comfort of strangers he barely knows. That's not a marriage, that's a performance, and I won't spend my life performing." I set the microphone down gently on the table beside me. I slid the ring from my finger and placed it there too. Careful, not thrown, not dramatic, just final. Then I walked off that stage past 250 silent guests, straight to the back corner of the room, and I took my parents by the hand. "Let's go home," I told them. My father's eyes were wet. My mother didn't say a word, just held on to me like she used to when I was small. We walked out of Cedar Grove Manor together, the three of us, leaving behind the string lights and the band and the life I thought I wanted. I never signed that marriage license. 6 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I sat on the edge of my bathtub for a long time that night, staring at a test on the counter, trying to make sense of a future I hadn't planned for. I was scared in a way I hadn't let myself be during the wedding itself, scared of raising a child alone, scared of what people would say, scared that I had traded a big house and a comfortable name for uncertainty. But somewhere in that quiet bathroom, another feeling crept in underneath the fear, something steadier. I thought about the little brick house I grew up in, the carport, the foil-wrapped sandwiches on my dorm doorstep, and I understood that none of what mattered most had ever come from money in the first place. My parents didn't blink when I told them. My dad started clearing out the spare room before I even asked him to, and my mom just held my face in her hands and said, "We've done this before, baby. We'll figure it out together." Every conversation with Brandon after that happened through attorneys, calm and businesslike, protecting the child who hadn't even been born yet from any more of that family's chaos. I never went looking for revenge. I never posted about it, never dragged the Calloway name through the mud myself. I didn't have to. The truth traveled on its own, carried by 250 guests who had seen it firsthand. Within the year, Brandon lost a promotion he'd been counting on after 2 board members quietly raised concerns about his judgment. A hotel partnership Callaway Hospitality had been chasing for over a year fell through without much explanation. Evelyn was asked to step down from a charity board she'd chaired for nearly a decade. A lifestyle magazine that had planned a glowing feature on the family quietly canceled it. Nobody took it from them. They just showed people who they really were, and people believed what they saw. My daughter, Harper Bennett, was born the following spring. I gave her my family's name on purpose so that every time someone said it, it would carry my parents with it. Thomas and Carol Bennett, who had once been pushed into a shadowed corner at someone else's celebration, became the center of Harper's whole world instead. A year after that, we celebrated Harper's first birthday in my parents' backyard. Folding chairs circled 2 picnic tables covered in checkered cloth. My dad manned the grill, apron slightly crooked, laughing with the neighbors, the smell of barbecue smoke drifting over the fence. My mom carried out a homemade cake with 1 candle, singing off-key and not caring one bit, frosting already smudged on her thumb from tasting it early. Kids ran through the grass chasing bubbles that caught the late afternoon light. Somebody's radio played low from a windowsill. There was no string quartet, no crystal chandeliers, no seating chart at all. Just people who loved us, sitting exactly where they wanted to be. I watched Harper toddle across the yard on unsteady legs, arms outstretched, straight into her grandfather's waiting arms, his laugh booming out over the yard as he scooped her up and spun her once, slow and careful. Something in my chest finally settled. I thought about that ballroom, the flowers, the senator, the magazine feature that never ran. None of it compared to this. Not even close. I used to think the most important seat in the room was the one closest to the front, closest to the important people, closest to the appearance of success. I don't believe that anymore. The most important seat in the room is wherever the people who truly love you happen to be sitting. If this story moved you even a little, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to the Family Revenge Tales. We tell stories about the families who hurt us and the courage it takes to walk away, and about the families we build afterward out of love instead of obligation. Every subscription helps us keep telling these stories for people who need to hear them. And if you're standing at your own crossroads right now, wondering whether you're allowed to choose yourself, I hope you'll remember this. You are never required to shrink yourself or hide the people who love you just to keep a seat at someone else's table. Choose the people who would never make you disappear. Choose your own dignity. It will always be worth more than any ballroom in the world. This story carries a few meaningful lessons worth sitting with. It shows that genuine love should never require hiding the people who shaped you, and that appearances built on the exclusion of others are never worth protecting. It teaches the value of quiet courage, the kind that doesn't need revenge or public destruction to restore dignity, only honesty and the willingness to walk away. It reminds viewers that financial or social status has no bearing on a person's worth, and that children raised with love and sacrifice often carry richer values than those raised with privilege alone. Finally, it offers reassurance to anyone who has ever felt unworthy in a room full of wealth or status. True belonging is never about the seat you're given, but about the people who would never let you sit alone.